Good morning, everyone. Hi, it is Stacy. This is Loving My Veteran. We are walking in my shoes. Today is part 3 of the series. Why is it always about the veteran? When do I matter? I think that's something we struggle with because we talk about the veterans so much and what they need and how they feel. And the reality is that we go through our stuff too. So we're going to talk about that today. And the topic of this today's part 3 is why are we roommates? I think I've been there. A lot of us have been there where we feel like roommates in the same house. And so we're going to talk about how we got there and what our feelings are like when we're in that moment. And that's today's topic. So grab your coffee. We're going to get started here in a minute. You know, we have to have coffee in the morning. And also, do not forget that we have coffee and conversation at 10 today as well. So, in about an hour, that link is on the website. You can just go there to www.lovingmyveteran.com and click on community and scroll down, and you'll find the coffee. Pop on and join us. We talk about anything. So, today, why is it always about the veteran? You know, that was one of my complaints when we first started this, and I first started this journey was I went to find help, and everything was about the veteran. How not to trigger the veteran, how to deal with the veteran's going to be depressed. The veteran may have anxiety. The veteran may have nightmares. The veteran may have flashbacks. The veteran may have all of this information was out there. The veteran may shut down. Well, knowing that it's going to happen doesn't make it easier when it does happen. So knowing that that exists, it was all about healing the veteran. It wasn't about how to heal us as a family. And so as things started to escalate and we didn't know things like communication was horrible. We didn't understand communication. We didn't understand how to express our needs and our feelings and our wants. A distance started to grow. And there became a time where I felt like we were roommates in the same house. Yeah, we went through the routine of getting up and fixing coffee and the I love you and the same rhythmic kisses every morning and every night. We went through that. But we had no interaction. It was like, okay, so you're busy. Like if I was busy, you're busy. I don't need to help you with that. I don't need to see that part. I really don't care about that part of your life. And so we became roommates in the same house. We we didn't interact like a couple. We didn't have conversations. We didn't do a lot of things that we should have and could have done and that we can now do now because we were roommates. And that is a very lonely feeling to be in a house with somebody or be in a relationship with somebody that's supposed to share your life with you and feel like you can't talk to them. It's a very lonely place. It's a place that we don't always want to be in. And it's a very hard thing for us to overcome. You know, those days weren't full of joy and happiness. They had moments of it, but they were not full of joy and happiness. We could be sitting on the exact same couch, watching the exact same show, and it was cold and it was distant. We had that. We had that space where we could be in the same room and have so little interaction that it didn't matter. It wasn't about how to talk and help with dinner, or we did in the beginning, we did a lot of that. I remember the nights in the beginning, and he would make this amazing stuffed London broil. And we interacted. Good morning, Rocky. And we interacted. And we lived a life together. But as the PTSD side really started to show its ugly head, my safety mechanism was to shut down. So was his. Now, I'm granted, we got into a lot of fight when we were at it, but just the day-to-day thing was, let's don't say anything. Let's don't rock the boat. Let's don't create the problems. Let's don't do any of this. And as a result, we grew very much apart in the same house. It was like, so we had this couch and it had 3 cushions on it, and he had his cushion and Stacy had hers, and the center cushion was no man's land. Nobody crossed into that center cushion. We didn't have conversations across that barrier. We didn't do anything. We coexisted in the same space. I'd do things that made me happy. He would do things that made him happy. Problem was that the things we were doing that made ourselves happy weren't making the other one happy. I felt like there was a lot dumped on me that I had to fix and I had to take care of and I had to do. You know, all the way down to paying the bills. And so the bills come and you're paying the bills. And then halfway through the month, something comes up and they want something. And then it becomes, well, I don't know anything about our finances. I don't know how much money we have. Well, yeah, because you didn't want to be in a part of it. You didn't want to interact in that thing when it was going on. I mean, we had the same bank app on our phone. And he's like, I don't know how much money we have. Can you not look at the bank app like everybody else? And it becomes a very lonely place when you live in a house that you tiptoe around because you're so afraid to set them off. When everything you do is totally separate. We had chickens back at the time, and, you know, it was going to be a thing, but it wasn't even a thing that we did together. It was like, well, you do this, and you do this part. And the coexistence, while we were physically in the same property and premises, the coexistence of our relationship didn't exist. My feelings didn't matter. At least I didn't think they did. And, you know, those were the days that more than not, I went in that room and I was crying and I was alone and I felt desperate. And I'm like, why do I even matter? And we could be sitting there and finally had said nothing all day to each other. And he'd be scrolling through his Facebook and he's like, oh, look, this is so-and-so and she was a friend of mine from this and that and the other. And we did this and we did that and we did this. And I was getting pissed, right? This friend of yours that was 30 years ago didn't really matter. This friend of yours, I was jealous of some chick through Facebook that he is not anywhere geographically close to because why? He was part of their life and interacting in their life. He had his friend. She had a little girl. And he was like, oh, look, it's like Peanut's doing this and this is happening and this is happening. And he was part of their life, but he wasn't part of ours. There wasn't a part of our life. And so I felt very shut off and I felt very distant and I'd already felt very separated from my family and my friends. Why? Because you don't sit there and discuss with your family and your friends life with a PTSD veteran. They've already made the judgment. So he could get behind his phone and the screen of his phone and have conversations with people who knew him and knew what he was like and be part of their life, but you couldn't interact with me. And I was alone. In our house together, I was alone. I didn't have anybody I could talk to. I didn't have anybody who understood. I didn't have anybody who got it. It was all about him. Now, I'm going to tell you that human nature does make it about ourselves, by the way. Right? We have a natural instinct of survival and self-satisfaction that is a natural instinct that we do try to take care of, and it's self-survival, and it's a natural instinct. So he was doing him. Have to be good for yourself before you can be good for anybody else. I wasn't doing that. I wasn't taking care of myself. I was more worried about taking care of him. More worried about fixing that broken part. More worried about if the news we saw was going to upset him. More worried about if the car driving through the parking lot was going through the housing development was going to trigger him. More worried about having to go out and say, hey, we need to go to the grocery store, and was I going to get the good guy, or was I going to get the whole Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing? And it became a very lonely place to be. You couldn't pick up the phone and call your friends. And you damn sure couldn't invite them over, because you didn't know what you were going to get. I remember fixing dinner. We had a friend that did come in. We were growing a garden, and he would come by and help us grow a garden and do stuff. And I remember fixing dinner. And we were going to eat dinner. Everybody knew what time we were eating dinner. He got into space. He didn't want to participate. So here I'm sitting here with like dinner on the table, and we got people over. He's nowhere to be found. You want to talk about a lonely spot? What do you do in that awkwardness? What do you do when your plans and your needs and your desires aren't met? I'm going to tell you what I did. I sucked it up and I rolled on. And as a result, I got more and more angry, more and more bitter, more and more self-defeated, more and more felt like I was let down, more and more feeling less worthy, more and more feeling like I was just there. That's what happened. People talk about secondary PTSD. Wasn't so much secondary PTSD. I just felt like shit because I allowed it to go on. I didn't know at the time that I could have a conversation with him. I didn't know at the time that I needed to have a conversation with myself. You know, I remember being little and people were saying, look, you're fine as long as you don't talk to yourself. If you talk to yourself, you're crazy. Well, I'm going to tell you now, best conversation you can ever have, ever, is the conversation with yourself. How many times did something good ever happen and you want to go celebrate that and share that with your veteran, and oh, they're in a space today, they can't listen. So everything you've worked for has no value, and you beat yourself up over it. Why? Because your spouse, your loved one, your partner, they're supposed to be the person you share your life with. But they're not in a space to receive what you've got to say, so you just suck it up, and then you start developing the mentality that what you do doesn't matter. So why bother? You know, I did a series a long time ago. Probably need to bring that one back up. Winnie the Pooh is probably my favorite book ever, and it was actually written about PTSD. The Eeyore and the why bother. And I don't think it's necessarily the veteran that develops the why bother attitude. It's us. Why should I try to do something good? It's going to fall apart. Why should I try to have a conversation? It's not going to work. Why should I try to do something special? It's never going to be successful. Oh, it's your birthday? Why am I going to even think about having a birthday party or a celebration? Because nobody's going to remember it anyway. Why bother? Those were the days of being the roommate. Those were the days of it not mattering. And what infuriated me with it was, at one point we had roommates, right? And him and I could, my veteran and I could be in the house, and we could be very distant. And all of a sudden the roommate come in and they want to throw darts, and hell, they're throwing darts till 1 o'clock in the morning. And I'm upstairs by myself. Or he wants to go have a conversation with somebody he worked with. We're riding around, we stop and we talk to him. He gets out and goes and sees them. Where am I in the truck? Can't have a conversation with me on the way there, but you can damn sure stop and have a conversation with them forever. I didn't matter. It didn't matter to me. Or I didn't feel like I mattered to him. How come it's okay when they get stressed out and overworked and overdone that they can shut down and do their thing? I know somebody posted about that this morning, that the veteran was like, I'm just done for a while. You and the kids and life and the house and the responsibilities are too much. I just need to go away for a couple of days. And you look at him like, what the fuck, you're not the one changing the diapers, babe. So what it does to us is it brings our self-esteem down, and it brings our self-worth down, and it brings our self-value down, and we don't feel like we've got it in us anymore. We feel beat up, and we feel the loneliest we have ever felt. And the sad part is a lot of times it happened in our own house. I was excited when we could have hall sex, y'all. That part that at least we communicated when we passed each other in the hall and we said, F you. That was at least conversation. And so what I did when I became part of this roommate situation, when I felt like I was, I learned to push buttons to at least get some interaction. Because the no interaction was way worse than the bad interaction. And I would push buttons to get it. Wasn't helpful. Wasn't helpful at all. It was harmful. Not so much to him or the relationship, but to me. Because when I pushed the buttons to get the interaction, I didn't get positive interaction. I didn't get I love you interaction. I got interaction that made me feel dumb, that made me feel stupid, that made me feel unworthy, that made me feel like my opinions didn't matter, that made me feel like whatever I had to say had no value. So by pushing the buttons at least meant he was alive and having a conversation with me. Those conversations were not meaningful. They actually did more damage to me when I pushed the buttons to elicit a response, even a negative one. Because all it did was bring my self-value down. Again, that's not the things people want to talk about. How do you tell somebody that you're freaking alone in your own house when they're right there? You're going to pick up your phone, you're going to call your friends, you're going to call your family, you're going to tell them, look, we haven't even said 3 words to each other. And when I say, what I mean, we haven't said 3 words to each other in days. We got the had to, good morning, I love you, kiss, and the goodnight kisses. But the rest of the day, there was no conversation. It's a pretty lonely place to be. Or how many times when you've tried to have a conversation about something that's going on, and because they shut down to deal with stress, they look at you and say, you know what your problem is? You just need to turn off. It's not who I am. It's not how I respond to stress. And so they dictate to you what you need to do because it's what works for them, and it's not working for you, but nobody wants to listen. And when you continue to do something that works for you and they see it, and then they're coming in, I told you not to do that. Y'all remember those days? We had them. We had a lot of them. I didn't want a roommate. I already had one. At least he talked to me at times. But when I had the love of my life, we didn't talk. We were distant. We were roommates. We coexisted in the same space. We went through a bunch of emotions. Somebody said to me, why? How did you get past that? Why did it happen? Being roommates in the same space happened because we didn't know how to communicate. Being roommates in the same space existed because we didn't know how to communicate. Because if he said something to me and it wasn't right, or I took it the wrong way because maybe he wasn't good at effective communication, I dismissed it and said it was stupid. Not in those exact words, probably sometimes in those exact words. When I said something, what happened? He dismissed it and said it was stupid. We didn't know how to communicate. We didn't know how to talk. You know, the most basic thing we do in this world is communication. We learn it from the time we're little. You know, babies point at things and they want them. And people pick up on that. We didn't pick up on any of that. We were two strangers living in the same house. And it made me question my worth and my value and why I was still there. It made me question why I was there. It made me ask, why do you do this? Now I have a stubborn streak that's a mile long. And when people tell me you can't do something, it typically inspires me to do it. Just because that's my nature. If you tell me you can't do something, I'm like, game on. But not everybody's wired that way. So why do you think we have 22% of post-Gulf War era veterans and their families getting divorced? Or staying together. It's 78% that are getting divorced. Because that 22% is an elite group. Because we're these people who are like, oh, no, no, no. It doesn't even mean we're doing it right. It means that we're so determined to be like, nope, not gonna happen. Challenge accepted. Being roommates in the same house was lonely. Being roommates in the same house was hard. It put me in one of the darkest spaces I'd ever been in. And while we go through the motions and we pretend to exist, and I took it, and every day we didn't argue, I took it as a success, and it was. But we didn't argue because we had figured it out. We didn't argue because we didn't talk to each other. We didn't argue and get into it because we didn't communicate with each other. We lived our little lives in the same house. There were many times I ate by myself. There were many times he ate by himself. There are many times that we fixed dinner, one or the other of us, that the dinner ended up in the trash can because we didn't want to talk. And then when we did, it got ugly, so we threw it away. Now, that's about the dumbest thing ever, but I don't throw nothing away now. How much food? But we threw it away. You know how lonely it is to be sitting at a table by your damn self trying to eat when they're sitting in the house with you? It's a lonely feeling. It was a lonely feeling. And we lived it. And we had to learn to communicate. Being roommates in the same house is an awful feeling. But it is a reality of what we face. It is something that we face, and something that we have to learn to overcome, and something that somebody has to be the catalyst to make the change. And I'm not telling you it's easy, because God knows we made the changes. We did them wrong a lot. We finally found what worked. But in the words of Thomas Edison, I found about 10,000 ways not to communicate before I found the one way that did work. The choice is you can be the roommate in the house and live your life that way. There are a lot of people who do it. Or if you want a relationship, we can work together to find the ways to communicate. We had a meeting last night and we were talking about things that drove people here. Why did you come? And communication was one of them. Communication was a big part of it. I didn't know how to talk to him. He didn't know how to talk to me either. It wasn't fair the way we talked to each other. It wasn't pretty the way we talked to each other. It wasn't a lot of things. We had to learn to get past that in order to stop being roommates. We had to get over that. And we had to work hard at it. We're not roommates anymore. Although there's days he's way up in my bubble and I wish he'd be a roommate, but it's okay. Be careful what you wish for. I wouldn't have it any other way. Being lonely is a horrible feeling. Feeling isolated and cut off is a horrible feeling. And it's what we feel, and it's what we felt, and nobody teaches us how not to feel that way. Nobody helps us understand you don't have to live this way. And the answer isn't to run. The answer isn't to bail on it. The answer is to put forth the effort and find the way that works. Because you can. And it does. The key, people give you all these reasons and what the key is. And there's a lot of things that come into play with developing a relationship with your veteran. Understanding the warfighter mindset, seeing things from their side, understanding self-worth, all of those things. There's a lot of pieces that fall into play. But the basis is exactly what we're named for. Do you love your veteran? And are you willing to put in the work? Loving my veteran. I love him. Always loved him. Didn't like him. Not all the time. But do you love him? And if you love him, are you willing to put in the work to make the change? That's what it's about. Slow, consistent work. And you will change your life. And you will change his life or her life. And you will have a better relationship. And we're going to talk more about our feelings the next 2 days. And we're going to talk about how it's not always about the veteran, it's got to be about us. And one of the things we're going to talk about in the next 2 days is learning to celebrate ourselves. It's important. So we're going to talk about that as well. I'm going to get off of here. We have coffee in about a half an hour. So again, go to the website. It's under community. Scroll down to the link that says coffee chat. Click it. Come join us for coffee. We can have great conversations that way. Lots of good stuff coming out, going on in the future. Stay tuned. Yeah, we are so blessed to have an amazing board and leadership people. We were meeting till very late last night, going forward with where we need to go. And we need y'all as well. So I'm going to get off here. I'm Stacy. This has been Walking in My Shoes. We're loving my veteran. I love mine today, every day, and always. Have a blessed day.